seems to be the buzzword of the century. It has gripped the nation, and it's not hard to see why. With the soaring mortgage rates, the world news that is ever unfolding in a worse direction day by day, and the crisis across the world when it comes to the economy and capitalism and just the downfall across the world, it's not hard to see that this world that we live in creates an anxiety within all of us that seems to be never ending. But just like everything else in life, we need to learn how to cope with it and change the narrative so that it's being a tool for us instead of against us. And that's what we talk about on this channel. How can we look at the world around us, take lessons from it, import these new messages, and shift our life accordingly? Every choice we make is bringing us closer to who we want to be or further away. And that statement in and of itself might cause a great deal of anxiety. And anxiety really is a fear of the unknown. You're thinking about the future and wondering what's going to happen next, trying to predict it, trying to shift it, trying to think your way out of whatever problem is going to come up next. Now, that is a default that many of us go into, and it's very easy to spiral when the world around us is designed to make us feel that way. Very rarely do we turn on the news or have a conversation with someone and it's extremely positive and enlightening and lighthearted and full of joy. Most of the time it is negative or difficult or causes anxiety. Even if you didn't have it at the start of the conversation, hearing about somebody else's fears might create it in yourself. So if the anxiety that is coming up is because of the unknown, then let us step into that unknown and try to unravel it as much as we can. There's a very famous quote that comes out of movies that have to deal with going to the future or going into the past with time travel, and it goes along the lines of, don't change anything in the past because it could drastically change the future. Don't go and talk to anyone. Don't pick up a rock. Anything you do could drastically change the future. And so with that being said, it brings us to lesson number 1, which is, if a small thing could drastically change the past, can we do something small to drastically change the future now? And again, this might be anxiety inducing just thinking about it. Oh, every choice I make is so wrapped up in responsibility that anything I do is going to positively or negatively affect me for the rest of my life. And yes, that might seem like a lot of power, but it's power that you can yield. And you need to know which direction it is that you want to go. And the only way to really explore that is to look back on what caused this anxiety for you before, dive into it and explore why it did. A lot of the times this anxiety comes up because people are asking us questions that we don't know the answers to, or we are being presented problems that we don't know how to fix. So if somebody is asking you questions or trying to force a view on you, if you have thought about your own life and figured out what it is that you want, then that person's viewpoint won't matter as much because you have this piece of paper that states all the things that you like about yourself or that you do or don't want. And now you have something to fall back on. So this anxiety has something to break against. And where do you start? Well, you can start off as simple as it can be. Do you like Coke or Pepsi? Do you like soda at all? And exploring the characteristics about yourself that you do or don't like or participate in is something that is entirely up to you. And you can dive into it as much or as little as you want to. And if somebody is trying to tell you how you should live your life, you will now have this unending list because you will continue to add to it, and it will change. Someday you may look back and be like, well, Pepsi really wasn't the choice, Coca-Cola was. Or someday you might be like, I don't actually drink soda anymore, so I don't really participate in this narrative at all. So knowing about yourself and what you do or don't like will create this foundation of the life that you want and be able to give you this armor to walk through the world a little bit easier. And you might be thinking, really, if I know whether like Coke or Pepsi, it's going to solve the question when somebody asks me, when am I going to get married? And it might be the stepping stone to being able to answer that question. And for you right now, the answer to that question might be no, I want to focus on myself. And I want to look back on this time as a time that I spent on myself, growing myself and understanding the path that I want to walk. Maybe 5 years from now, 10, 15, 20 years from now, you might have a different answer to that question, but you won't know why you do or don't have an answer to this question if you don't investigate it for yourself. And getting to learn yourself is a lifelong journey. This will never end. You will always be able to go back to these questions and ask them again. And it can be as simple as, do you like going for walks, or do you like going for bike rides? And it can be as complicated from there as you need it to be to understand yourself more. There's so many questions out there on the internet, but the questions that you really want the answers to are the ones that keep running around in your head. When does anxiety spike, and what questions are behind those thoughts that are coming up? Ask them, write them down, and now you'll have something to look back on and say, hey, I've thought about this actually, and I don't need somebody else telling me what it is that I do or don't want for my life. And you'll be a little less punchy, you'll be a little less aggravated, you'll be able to stand firmly in your answers, and you can always say, I don't want to answer that, or you can change the topic, or you can move on. Nobody is owed an answer just because they ask you a question, and you don't owe anybody anything in this world, whether or not you feel like you should. And a lot of anxiety comes from that too, where we think somebody's owed something because they did something for us or they didn't. And because nobody owes you anything, you also don't owe them anything. Somebody can choose to walk out of your life, and there is a lot of anxiety around that. Someone's just gonna leave if I don't answer correctly. And at the end of the day, if something is meant to be in your life, it will be. And if it's not, it will walk out of your life. And you don't want somebody or something to only be in your life because you're perfect or you're playing this part. If you can't be your real self, then being around this person isn't right for you anyway. So, lesson number 1, get close to those questions that bring this anxiety. Write them out, explore them, go try new things, go find this person that you want to be, and it will be on the other side of figuring out these questions and changing and developing and continuing to sit with yourself and look at the hard things that are going on. Lesson number 2 that I've learned is you need to get outside as often as you can, or at least once a day. Now that might be a tale as old as time. Going outside, walking in nature, sitting next to a tree, being in the sun is helpful, and it is helpful, and I'm sure there's a lot of scientific reasons and more explained therapeutic reasons. But for me personally, being outside and getting to recenter into the present moment is really the main point of going outside. And if you can't get outside, it's raining, it's snowing, it's whatever, go to the window and open it just a little bit and breathe in fresh air. That might also shift your mood pretty significantly and pretty quickly. So if you can't get outside for whatever reason, if you can't go for a 10-mile walk, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be an extreme, but it's meant to ground you in the present moment. And another simple way to do that is to pay attention to how you're breathing. There's been many days in these past few weeks where I just felt like I couldn't get out of bed. The time just kept rolling and rolling, and the anxiety kept building up. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't know what was gonna happen. I felt like there was nothing that could get me out of bed, and the only things that could help was I paid attention to how I was breathing, and then it gave me enough space between all of these racing thoughts to recenter and to refocus on what it is that matters to me, and I was able to shift and to get out of bed. And if you are in those anxiety spirals, and I know that it can happen out of nowhere, or it can be very related to the context of your life right now, give yourself the freedom and the space to reconnect back to the present moment. If that means going out for a walk, if that means opening the window, standing next to it for 5 minutes, just feeling the cool breeze on your face, stick your hand out of the window, don't go crazy, but just be present with this moment in time, and that is going to recenter you, because anxiety is questioning the future or worrying about what has happened, and you truly can't change anything that's happened before you or what has happened to you. You can't change that. You can learn from it, you can explore that. If you have spent years thinking about the past, maybe there's no more lessons to learn, and even if there is, you can always choose to just leave it where it is and say, okay, I don't know what else I can get out of this. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but I choose to be in this moment right now. The future is made 2.5 seconds at a time. That is actually how long you can experience the present moments. It's 2.5 seconds. So you are creating this future 2.5 seconds at a time, and therefore the future doesn't really exist in the abstract. It only exists 2.5 seconds right now. So the present moment, usually there's nothing really going badly in the present moment, and if there was, you would be focused on that instead. If you were actually experiencing something intense at that moment, in that very moment, you would be dealing with it. If there is an accident or something like that, you would have to deal with it in that moment, and it would suck in that moment as well, and you would want to be present in that moment as much as possible, but you are probably not going to be ruminating over the past if you're experiencing something really difficult in the moment. So usually anxiety is hitting us when we're just sitting there and thinking about the future or stuck in the past. So bring yourself to the present moment. What's wrong in this moment? And when I'm laying in bed, cuddled up next to all my pillows, there's usually nothing insanely wrong. It's just the racing in my mind of all those thoughts. So change your breathing, get near a window, get outside, get in the present moment as quickly as you can. And it only takes half a second to shift your mind, and that's the amount of space that you really need to get yourself out of that. And yes, 10 minutes later you might fall back into it, but then you have already started this training process of getting back to the present moment. So try to do that. Okay, lesson number 3, that's also super helpful, is reading a book or journaling, or just even looking at a wall and paying attention to it and not letting your eyes race around. One of the big things that I've also noticed is if my thoughts are going crazy, my eyes are also probably shifting around and moving at 1,000,000 miles around. And that is also how your brain works. When you think of a memory, you usually look down to the left when you think of something that happened to you in the past. And there is actual scientific research that shows that when you think about specific thoughts, your mind and your eyes will move in a certain direction to help you search for those thoughts. So if you are forcing yourself to look at one specific place, your mind can't race, because your eyes need to be shifting around in order for your mind to have as many thoughts as it does. So try to stare at a painting on a wall and not move your eyes and see if that helps. It usually can. I know that when I start reading a book and my mind is racing, I could read 3 pages of a book and not know anything that I've read if I am racing in my head with all of these thoughts. So if you need to really center, just stop and just stare at maybe a page on the book, a word on the page in the book, or just at the book itself or at the wall for a few seconds to refocus, and then you can start reading again, and then you can keep doing this as many times as you need to focus back on the wording in front of you. And if you're not able to do that as quickly, just stare at the wall for 30 seconds, 10 seconds. Just see what it does for you, and see how your mind has to work at a different rate when you can't shift your eyes. Try it out. The first time I did it, I was like surprised at how true it was. And if you are just having these thoughts race so much that you can't read this book, try just writing how you're feeling out in a journal. I really started journaling in 2020. I had done it since 2013, 2014, but I really got into it in 2020 during the pandemic, and I wrote so many different journals. I don't necessarily go back to any of those journals, but what they served was a place where I could go to and feel at ease to just share how I was feeling. No one has to read it. You don't have to read it. You don't have to share it with anyone, but the paper is not forcing you to feel a certain way. It's not judging you. It's just a place where you can release all of these thoughts. So if I am trying to read a book and I can't, I will try to open up a journal and write in that. Another thing that I like to do when I do read books is to write out quotes that I like in them. Having those two things happen at the same time can also help just to refocus yourself on what's actually going on. And at that time, it is really important to just share with the page what you're going through and what you're thinking. And you don't have to judge yourself. You don't have to write the next great American novel. You can just share what you're doing and be present in the moment. So try focusing on a single point on a wall in the book, and try journaling if you can't, and then try journaling in general. Just like we said in the first lesson, to figure out who you are, you can do that through journaling. You can do that through finding questionnaires that ask specific questions, and I'll post a few questions down below that you can start off with. You can share it in the comments, or you can write it in your own book, but let me know what you guys do to calm your anxiety. These are just a few things that are pretty basic, pretty standard, but honestly, when you're running through a spiral, anything that you could do to get yourself out of it is helpful. And if it seems small, honestly, that's probably the best. Like, can we start anywhere and just get ourselves out of it, at least for a few moments? And the more we try to get ourselves out of it and create these habits, the better we'll be able to cope with it. So try any of these out. Let me know what you think, what you do to help with anxiety, and I will share very soon about the anxious achievers and the specific tips that she has. But until then, I hope that you have an amazing week. Enjoy the world. It's yours. I'll see you soon. Bye.